Chapter 181. Malfoy, your snake is mine. Nothing happened for the next 2 weeks. Perhaps the heir had detected the Auror training class's investigation. Perhaps he simply wasn't ready to act. Either way, Hogwarts remained eerily calm. The only change was that students started spending more time in the dueling club and practicing spells more diligently. The Chamber of Secrets had been opened. The monster within had been seen. It had only attacked Filch's cat so far, but no one could be sure how powerful it truly was. Legend said Slytherin's monster would be formidable. Maybe 1,000 years had weakened it, the students guessed, and it could only hurt small animals now. Or perhaps it was quietly regaining strength. In any case, everyone agreed. Improving their fighting ability was the safest plan. On Friday night, the dueling club was packed. Pairs of students faced off across the Great Hall, trading hexes and parries. Draco Malfoy was in the middle of one particularly intense bout with Harry. Unlike Harry, Malfoy hadn't joined the Auror training class or tried out for Quidditch. He had given up sports and extracurriculars to practice magic. He'd spent the summer drilling spells at Malfoy Manor and studying the family grimoires until Lucius declared proudly that the House of Malfoy had a proper successor. He'd given up his Quidditch dream to focus on rebuilding Slytherin's glory. He wanted to be unmatched, even against the boy who lived. Malfoy slipped and feinted at Harry, eyes hard with determination. He had been saving a new spell for an occasion like this. After dodging an Expelliarmus, he thrust his wand forward and shouted, "Serpent Sortia!" A huge black snake burst from the tip of his wand and landed on the open ground between them. It raised its head toward Harry and began to slither straight for him. Malfoy felt a flush of pride. This snake was even larger than in practice. He could taste victory. Potter, trapped between the serpent and me, will crack. I won't have to cheat like last year with that cloud mist trick. Harry was rattled for a fraction of a second. Should he deal with the snake first, or try to take Malfoy down and then deal with the serpent? He decided on the latter. Dodging the snake's strikes with nimble footwork, he closed in on Malfoy and hurled spells at him with everything he had. But the snake was astonishingly quick. It followed Harry wherever he moved, interfering with his aim. Harry's spells went wide and his temper flared. "Get away!" he snapped at the snake. To his surprise, the snake paused, then obediently slithered to the side. He could talk to snakes. A thought struck him. Could he command it to attack Malfoy? Pointing at Draco, Harry said, as if possessed, "Attack Malfoy!" The snake hesitated for a moment, then obeyed and lunged at Draco. For an instant, Harry's grin was triumphant, until he noticed the great hall had gone suddenly, startlingly quiet. Every pair of eyes was fixed on him. Before he could process the change in atmosphere, a curse streaked in from the side and struck the snake. It turned to a puff of black smoke and vanished. Professor Snape had stepped forward, wand out, his expression unreadable as he looked at Harry. Snape had been supervising the older students practicing the shield charm when that cold, hissing sound reached his ears. It made his skin prickle. He recognized the language immediately. Parseltongue, and the voice that had spoken it was Lily Potter's son. The realization hit him like a physical blow, leaving his usually sharp mind temporarily muddled. He had questions about Harry, about what this talent might mean, but for the moment he only stood there, watching, thoughts tumbling over each other. Harry, bewildered, suddenly became aware of the hush and the looks aimed at him. Astonishment, fear, people edging away as if from something contagious. Why were they looking at him like that? He caught Ron and Hermione rushing forward. Hermione grabbed his sleeve while Ron took hold of his arm, and together they began to pull him away from the dueling ring. Students parted on either side as he was led out, whispering and pointing. Malfoy, left standing with his wand still raised, felt his head spin. Potter speaks Parseltongue? That voice. Only people from that line have it. Could Potter have Slytherin blood? Could he be the heir of Slytherin? Merlin's pants. If that's true, then Slytherin's monster, could it be following him? Malfoy glanced at Snape's complex expression and bit his lip. He wasn't going to let Potter leave without an answer. He shoved through the students and chased after Harry, hissing suspicion and fury under his breath. Professor Snape didn't follow him. Duty called, and he had to make sure the dueling club ran smoothly that night. Under his watch, the students resumed their practice, but compared to before, most were distracted, huddled in groups, murmuring about what had just happened. Snape prowled the hall in a foul mood, scolding anyone who wasn't practicing properly. "Are you dueling or hosting a tea party? Shall I fetch tables, tea, and cakes so you can chat in peace? Is this what you call dueling? Pathetic. You cast spells so slowly, I thought you were polishing the floor. If you believe that this weak, feeble magic will save you in a real duel, you do well to prepare your wills." For a moment, some of the older students thought the familiar, sharp-tongued Snape had returned. When the dueling club ended, Snape went straight to Professor Swann's office and told him everything he'd seen. He'd already foreseen the trouble Harry would face, accused falsely, shunned by the whole school, and he wasn't good at handling that kind of thing. He needed help. Sebastian Swann listened to the worried professor and smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, Severus," he said. "I already have a plan. Wait until tomorrow morning and watch me work." By morning, the whole school had reached the same conclusion. Harry Potter was the heir of Slytherin. Parseltongue had been heard. What better proof was there? The students were certain he'd opened the Chamber of Secrets and released whatever monster was inside, then put on an act to fool his friends. Hermione, of course, still defended him. To everyone else, that made her foolish and dangerously naive. Being Muggle-born made her position especially precarious. Harry sat at breakfast with a large empty space around him. Only Hermione and Ron remained at his table. He wanted to stand up and shout that he wasn't the heir of Slytherin, that he hadn't opened the chamber, but he also knew no one would believe him. They trusted what they'd heard and seen. His explanations would sound like lies. While he brooded, someone took the seat beside him. Professor Swann smiled. "Good morning. You two keep eating. I'm here on business. Business with you, Harry." Hermione and Ron exchanged puzzled looks. The other students at the tables had their jaws dropped. They had assumed Swann had come to question Harry, but this was unexpected. Everyone leaned forward to listen. Harry looked at him, feeling wronged. "Professor Swann, don't joke." "It's not a joke," Swann said. "There's serious business here. If we make it work, you could earn a large sum of galleons every year." Galleons. The word was like magic. Whispers rippled through the room as students imagined what the professor saw in Harry. Swann let them stew for a moment, then spoke plainly. "I'm interested in your gift, Parseltongue." Harry's chest tightened. "Don't be ridiculous, Professor. What good is such an evil talent?" "Evil?" Swann frowned. "Is it evil because you can speak to snakes? Or because people associate it with Slytherin?" He scanned the students and smiled. "You've all misunderstood Parseltongue, just as you've misunderstood Slytherin. Parseltongue is simply a magical talent, an ordinary one among many. Magical talents aren't good or bad in themselves. They're gifts some are born with." Harry brightened, about to speak, when Hermione asked, "Professor Swann, do you mean everyone has a magical talent?" "Of course," he answered. "Magical talent is a mysterious thing. Aside from certain family traits, most people's talents are different. Often a talent shows itself subtly, and the witch or wizard has to explore it. Some talents, though, are obvious at a glance, like Parseltongue. Or a talent might amplify a specific type of magic." He pointed to a boy nearby. "For example, Mr. Seamus Finnegan will likely excel at explosive charm work." Seamus flushed as the others nodded and remembered his past mishaps and spectacular explosions. Swann continued, addressing the gathering crowd now circling the table. "Honestly, Parseltongue is just a language aptitude. It doesn't give a direct boost to combat ability. It's only because of Slytherin that it's been mythologized into something dangerous and powerful. If someone hears it enough, they can learn it, like learning any other language. The only difference is that learned Parseltongue won't be inherited genetically the way native Parseltongue can be." The students nodded, thinking back over their assumptions. Parseltongue is just another language talent made it far less fearsome than Seamus's explosive knack, which couldn't be taught and could make someone formidable in combat if they chose to pursue it. Harry, feeling his earlier gloom lift, looked at Professor Swann gratefully. "So what is it you want? Do you plan to learn Parseltongue yourself?" "If you want to learn," Swann said, "I can teach you anytime." Chapter 183, Making Money with Magical Talent. No, Harry, Sebastian said with a slight smile and a shake of his head. I have no intention of learning Parseltongue. Huh? Harry looked puzzled. Didn't you want my Parseltongue? Don't be impatient, Harry. Sebastian patted Harry's shoulder, stood up, and turned to the students. Those of you who have taken care of magical creatures know how difficult it can be to communicate with them properly. To improve communication, some powerful witches and wizards have learned the languages of magical creatures. For example, our headmaster Dumbledore is fluent in Mermish and Gobbledygook, and Newt Scamander knows a good number of creature languages as well. Still, compared to the total number of wizards, those who understand creature languages are far too few. To change that, Swann Alchemy has formed a development team, Sebastian continued. They're working on alchemical devices that can communicate with different magical creatures. I've invited Mr. Newt Scamander to advise on languages, but he doesn't speak snake tongues. Harry, he said, looking at him, I'd like to invite you to join Swann Alchemy to provide Parseltongue support for the project. There are many snake-like magical creatures, rune spores, horned serpents, alchemies, and so on. Most snake-like creatures have poor tempers, and wizards, especially creature breeders, get injured by them every year. A reliable device that can communicate with snakes would greatly reduce those injuries. Parseltongue is rare, Sebastian went on, so I can offer you a stake in the project. For every alchemy device sold that can communicate with snakes, you'll receive a substantial share. Are you willing? Willing. Harry nodded repeatedly like a bird pecking at seed. Even if he didn't earn a single nut, he'd accept. For years, people had kept their distance, convinced Parseltongue was evil. Now Sebastian had cleared that up and turned it into a marketable talent, something that could even improve safety across the magical world. Once these devices were on the market, Parseltongue would be reevaluated. It wouldn't be a stigma anymore. It would be an asset. The other students listened in envy. Whispers broke out all around. Why don't I know Parseltongue? Those galleons would have been mine. Who knew Parseltongue wasn't evil? It's a cash cow. With that one talent, Harry Potter's basically financially set. So jealous. How much money can you make, though? Not everyone needs to talk to snakes. You don't get it. If demand is small, the price will be higher. Snake breeders will buy whatever helps them, even if it's expensive, and people will buy it just to show off. The conversation spiraled on, full of questions and envy. Several students crowded around Sebastian. Professor Swann, can you tell what my magical talent is? Can you help me test mine? I want to do business too. See if my talent is useful to you? Sebastian raised his hands to quiet them. Unfortunately, there is no definitive test for magical talent in the wizarding world. You usually have to discover it over time. Seeing their disappointed faces, he added, there are a few guidelines that might help. If you come from a wizarding family, ask your parents if any talents are recorded. Magical talents often run in bloodlines. If there's no record, or if you're from a muggle family, observe what you're naturally good at. If you excel at a particular skill or spell, it's likely related to your talent. Magical talents are varied and strange. Anyone can discover theirs if they pay attention. The students continued peppering him with questions, but Sebastian, pleased and in a good mood, sat beside Harry and answered them one by one. Meanwhile, a figure in a black robe slipped quietly out of the great hall and headed for the potions office. Snape's face wore a faint, almost wry smile. After watching Sebastian's handling of the situation, his concerns about Harry had evaporated. Relieved, he decided to go find Damocles and discuss optimizations to the Wolfsbane potion. At the Slytherin table, Draco Malfoy ate his breakfast with a complicated expression. All at Hogwarts, his relationship with Harry had always been part rivalry, part friendship. He'd spent the previous day quietly worrying when he learned Harry was a Parselmouth. Now that the misunderstanding had been cleared up overnight, he logically should have felt relieved for him. Instead, when he touched his chest with his left hand, he felt oddly blocked. Why did he feel so uncomfortable inside? The topic of magical talent only grew hotter as the day wore on. By evening, the students were still debating what their talents might be, and everyone had reached a new consensus about Parseltongue. It wasn't evil, it was a lucrative skill. But there was one particular person who did not accept that conclusion. In fact, on hearing it, That person flew into a rage. Chapter 184. The Furious Notebook. In the Gryffindor girls' dormitory, first-year Ginny Weasley had finished her ablutions early and slipped back into her bed. She closed the curtains carefully, shutting the world out. It wasn't dark inside the curtains. A soft light spilled across the bedding and made the small space feel snug and private. Ginny settled into a comfortable position, drew out an old-looking notebook, laid it flat on her lap, picked up a quill, and began to write quickly, recording what she had seen and heard that day. The quill tip whispered over the paper, a sound that made her feel oddly calm. "Tom, do you remember Harry Potter, the boy I told you about? Yesterday he showed he can speak Parseltongue, and now people think he's the heir of Slytherin," she wrote. "Everyone says he opened the Chamber of Secrets and released the monster. Because of fear, they've all turned on Harry Potter. Seeing him treated like that hurt me. I wanted more than anything to be his friend, to sit by him like Ron does and comfort him." As she finished the last sentence, the handwriting in the notebook began to vanish, line by line, as though wiped away by an invisible hand. New writing appeared almost at once. It wasn't Ginny's tight scrawl, but neat, practiced lettering. "Ginny, my dearest," the new script read, "you haven't spoken to me lately. Tell me why." Ginny froze, a flicker of panic in her eyes. Since the Halloween feast, she hadn't contacted her friend Tom. She couldn't remember much of that night. She had woken up with paint all down the front of her robes, had gone to change, and when she returned to the third floor, she had heard the Chamber of Secrets had been opened, the walls defaced with writing, and even Filch's cat had been harmed. With those memories missing, she had feared she might have been involved. Professor Swann had announced he was leading the Auror training class to investigate, and the next 2 weeks, Ginny had kept her distance from the notebook, afraid to draw suspicion. Today, though, Harry had been cleared. Ginny's heart was lighter, and she wanted to tell Tom. She wrote an explanation of recent events and the news that Professor Swann had declared Parseltongue nothing more than a language-based magical skill. "I see. Don't worry," the handwriting replied calmly. "It seems Professor Swann hasn't found proof. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let your idol be wronged. By the way, you say Harry Potter speaks Parseltongue? I didn't expect him to share that talent with Salazar Slytherin himself. Isolated as he is, he must be desperate for friends. Go to him and befriend him. I am sure he will not refuse you." "No need," Ginny wrote. "Harry has been cleared of suspicion. People aren't afraid of Parseltongue anymore. Professor Swann said it's just a language-based talent anyone can learn." "Ordinary talent?" The new handwriting changed. Where it had been neat, the strokes now looked agitated, almost messy. "Nothing special at all?" The neat letters vanished, and a different hand filled the page in a rapid, scrawled rush, crooked and fierce. 2 whole pages became covered in ink in the blink of an eye. "Ridiculous," the notebook scrawled. "Calling Parseltongue an ordinary gift. It's the famed power of Slytherin. Ginny, do not blindly believe the professors. You cannot fathom how shallow some of them are. All they do is spout nonsense to hide their ignorance. That Professor Swann cannot begin to imagine how powerful Parseltongue truly is." The angry writing left no room for anything else. Professor Swann was an unlearned charlatan, and Ginny must not trust him. Ginny frowned as she read. She had been inclined to accept Swann's explanation. After all, it had helped clear Harry, so she didn't know why the usually gentle Tom had suddenly become so worked up, as if someone had slandered him instead. She didn't want to argue, though. In the empty margin she wrote, "It's late, Tom. I'm going to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." She put away her quill, tucked the notebook beneath her pillow, and drifted off. After midnight, unattended, the notebook leafed through its own pages. New lines appeared on a blank page. "That Muggle studies professor. He shouldn't be allowed at Hogwarts," the script hissed. "It may be necessary to act again and let this ridiculous man suffer the basilisk's punishment." The words faded, ink losing itself into the paper. As the last letters disappeared, Ginny hugged the notebook to her chest without quite waking. Her eyes were open, but unfocused, as if she were sleepwalking. She pushed the bed curtains aside and, barefoot and silent, slipped out of the dormitory. The castle at night was unusually still. Even the faintest breeze seemed to pass with caution. Ginny's footsteps were feather light. She moved as though drawn by something unseen, petals blown along a current, walking toward the third floor. She reached the entrance to the girls' lavatory and pushed the door open. Inside the room, the air was cold and damp, and the drip of water turned the silence eerie, but none of it touched her. She went straight to an ancient tap, lifted her face, and parted her lips as if to whisper. At that instant, a red streak of light flashed, and a sharp spell struck. Stupefy! Ginny pitched to one side. The notebook slipped from her hands and hit the lavatory floor. A second charm caught her and pinned her gently to the ground. A figure appeared in the doorway. Sebastian. He crossed the tiles with a slow smile, bent to pick up the notebook, and holding it in one hand, remarked quietly, "You finally couldn't resist, Tom." Chapter 185. Flirting with the Notebook. Sebastian casually flipped through the old notebook. Its pages were completely blank, no ink, no words, and he sneered inwardly. As one of Lord Voldemort's earliest Horcruxes, it was indeed unusual. Its intelligence and caution surpassed the others. He remembered the Slytherin locket Regulus had taken. That Horcrux subtly poisoned its holder's mind, bred suspicion and irritability, and slowly ate at their sanity. This notebook was different. It could assess a situation and pretend to be harmless until it was certain the outside world posed no threat. After Ginny had been attacked, the young Tom Riddle trapped in the diary must be uneasy, Sebastian thought. The notebook could sense the outside world in only two ways: by written conversation with whoever held it, or by controlling someone, like Ginny, after they had poured their soul into it, turning them into a puppet through which it perceived everything. Sebastian really wanted to rile that young Tom, but it wasn't the time, and the girls' lavatory wasn't the place. He slipped the notebook into his undetectable extension charm bag and stared at Ginny lying on the floor. With a flick of his wand, he checked her condition. Apart from a slight loss of life force, she was healthy. Counting the Halloween attack, this was probably only the diary's second time ring-fencing her. It hadn't had the opportunity to drain her thoroughly. Sebastian decided to make her forget the diary's existence. The fewer who knew about it, the better. He pointed his wand and murmured the charm, "Obliviate." Under his precise control, every memory of the notebook drained clean from Ginny's mind. Once he'd confirmed the spell had worked, he levitated her to her feet and led her out to the corridor. "Miss Weasley, wake up." Ginny blinked blearily and saw him smiling. "Professor Swann?" "Miss Weasley, why are you asleep out here?" She rubbed her eyes and realized she'd been curled on the third-floor corridor. Panic flitted across her face. "Professor Swann, I don't know why I'm here. I remember going to bed after I washed up. I didn't go out after hours." "Don't be nervous, Miss Weasley," Sebastian soothed. "I believe you weren't out after hours. No one out of bed after hours would simply sleep in a corridor. My guess is you sleepwalked." Ginny looked bewildered. She didn't have a sleepwalking problem, but she couldn't explain how she'd ended up there. "The floor's cold. To avoid getting ill, drink this small bottle. It'll help restore some strength, and I'll escort you back to Gryffindor." He produced a small bottle of potion, enhanced with a trace of the Philosopher's Stone, and handed it to her. Without thinking much, Ginny unscrewed the cap and drank. Sebastian escorted her back to the common room, then returned to his office. The night was long and sleep wouldn't come. He would use the hours to test the diary. He laid the notebook on his desk, cast a few detection spells as a show, and set the quick quotes quill to write. "Tom, Ginny told me about you," he had the quill write. "What are you? Answer me." The words vanished from the page as if consumed, then new handwriting appeared, slow and deliberate. "I am Tom Riddle, a harmless memory, a memory left in this notebook." Tom's tone was sullen. He hadn't expected Ginny to be attacked just for going on a simple hunt, nor that the diary would fall into this professor's hands. And now, the girl had apparently told this man of his existence. Time to act. "I recorded my past life at Hogwarts in this way," the diary wrote. "I know secrets of the castle, old horrors, events buried in history. Ask and I will show you." Sebastian smirked and let the quill write back. "Show me. What do you know?" The notebook tried to bait him. It began the familiar tale about the Chamber of Secrets. "When I was in my 5th year, the chamber was opened, and a muggle-born wizard was killed. I exposed the person who opened it. He was expelled, but because he was Gryffindor, Dumbledore protected him, and he was not sent to Azkaban. Do you want to see my memory of it? Sebastian feigned disinterest. The routine was old. He had the quill reply, I don't want to know. I don't believe Dumbledore would cover for someone in that way. Tomorrow I will speak with Headmaster Dumbledore. If your information isn't true, I will bring you to him. The diary's words grew sharper. Tom couldn't believe such an arrogant fool would be so careless. Slytherin-born and now a Muggle studies professor, of all things. Ginny had said the professor was investigating the chamber. Perfect. Tom would play along, win the man's trust, and then have him open the chamber himself so the basilisk could finish him. He would show this proud Slytherin what Parseltongue could accomplish. But before he could set that plan fully in motion, Sebastian closed the diary with a faint smile. The page went blank. That was it? Come back. Let's talk more. Tom fumed as the book sat shut and silent, fury and impatience building as his plea died unanswered. Chapter 186, Horcrux Meeting. Sebastian casually tucked the notebook into the bag, enchanted with an undetectable extension charm, stretched, let out a big yawn, climbed back into bed, and fell asleep quickly. On Sunday morning, sunlight poured through the curtains. By then, he had already packed and was ready to leave Hogwarts. He went back to Swan Manor via the fireplace for a hearty breakfast, then set out for his next destination. After a dizzying apparition, Sebastian appeared in a secluded valley deep in the Scottish Highlands. The valley was ringed by steep mountain walls, its terrain complex and treacherous, almost cut off from the world. A thin mist always hung in the air. When sunlight pierced it, the mist seemed edged with gold, tranquil and mysterious. In the center of the valley stood a small wooden house whose gray-brown planks blended with the surroundings, making it nearly invisible. A little stream trickled in front of the door, its murmur mixed with birdsong, bringing life to the hidden spot. The unassuming cabin was, in fact, a safe house Sebastian had arranged. To conceal it, he had employed the Fidelius charm, naming Regulus as secret keeper so that only he and Regulus could discover its location. Anyone who stumbled near would be confused by the charm, thinking it no more than an ordinary forest clearing. Sebastian pushed open the wooden door. A stale smell drifted out. The cabin had been empty for some time. He frowned, waved his wand, and murmured, "Sweeping vortex." A fresh breeze immediately circulated through the room, sweeping away mustiness and dust. The interior was sparsely furnished, almost bare. In the center of the main room, 3 high-level alchemical safes sat quietly with no other furniture. Sebastian stepped forward and inspected what was inside. Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem, Marvolo Gaunt's ring, and Salazar Slytherin's locket, all Horcruxes of Lord Voldemort. Compared to the old notebook, they seemed quieter, yet each still tried to tempt him the moment he touched them. "Wear me, and I will share the secret of eternal life," one murmured. "Don't leave me here, my friend. I will teach you deeper magic," another coaxed. "You foolish fellow," the third hissed. "Ignore my offer, and you will regret it." Sebastian paid them no heed. After confirming everything was in order, he closed the safes, sealing their magical signatures. "Dry as dust," he muttered. "No originality at all." He smiled at the notebook's memory. The notebook really is the strangest and most intelligent of the lot. The others are just a bunch of crazed promises. He reached into his bag again and placed a 4th alchemical safe beside the other 3. He took the old notebook out, weighed it in his hand, and without hesitation put it into the 4th safe and locked it. "4th Horcrux secured," he said. "Rest easy, young Lord Voldemort." He went over the remaining Horcruxes in his head. Helga Hufflepuff's cup was still hidden in Gringotts, waiting for the right moment. The fragment of soul that lodged in Harry was harmless for now. Removing it would be difficult, so for the moment it was better left where it was. Nagini remained somewhere in the Albanian wilds and had not yet been turned into a Horcrux. Another problem for a later time, likely after Voldemort's return. Satisfied, Sebastian bowed briefly to the 4 safes. "Goodbye, my dark lords. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts." Then he closed the cabin door and left. Standing in front of the door, he took a long breath. With the notebook secured, the basilisk would no longer be drawn out to menace Hogwarts. The school's alarm could be lifted. He wouldn't have to sleep at the castle every night anymore and could go home to Mia. That said, The Chamber of Secrets and the basilisk themselves still needed to be dealt with. He'd promised results, and the Auror training class had been busy investigating. If they produced nothing, it would look bad. Most of the clues had emerged, and the students should be able to deduce what lay in the chamber. He took in the valley's quiet one last time, then apparated back to Swan Manor for a well-earned nap. After a day of rest, Sebastian returned to the Auror training classroom full of energy. When training ended, he stood at the podium with a smile and asked, "It's been a while. What progress have you made on the Chamber of Secrets investigation?" The students' eyes lit up and they reported their findings one by one. Sebastian listened closely and then summarized. So, on Halloween, more than 20 students arrived late, left early, or missed the feast entirely. "Yes, Professor," a seventh year said, troubled. "We discussed it, but we still can't identify who the heir of Slytherin might be. There aren't enough clear leads." "You've done very well," Sebastian soothed. "As I've said before, we might not find anything definitive, but you've all practiced gathering and processing information." The little wizards nodded. Gathering information wasn't easy. They had to be careful how they questioned people to avoid arousing suspicion, and students' accounts were often muddled. They had to compare and cross-check multiple statements to extract accurate facts from noise. The progress they'd made required real effort. "What other clues about the chamber have you found?" Sebastian asked, smiling. There was a pause. Clues were indeed scarce. Then Harry hesitated, swallowed, and raised his hand. "Professor Swann, I found something unusual about the Chamber of Secrets. Chapter 187, Get Information from the Ghosts." Suddenly everyone turned to Harry. Special clues? So powerful. Was this the Savior's strength? Meeting their gazes, Harry couldn't help a twitch at the corner of his mouth. He straightened and continued. "I heard from a rather unusual source that on Halloween the Chamber of Secrets was opened for the second time." A collective gasp swept the classroom. "Opened a second time? When was the first time? Who opened it the first time?" "If Filch's cat was attacked this time, who was attacked the first time?" "Potter, don't keep us in suspense. Tell us everything so we can discuss it." Questions erupted from all directions. Harry felt helpless. Dobby the house elf had slipped him the information the previous night, but Ron had woken and Dobby had vanished in fright before Harry could ask more. He hadn't learned who had opened the chamber before, or exactly when. For the past 2 weeks, he, Ron, and Hermione had been digging through whatever they could find, but it was as if the school had covered the whole thing up. Harry spread his hands. "We've looked for a long time and found nothing. There's no record in the school history, and no book in the library mentions it." The students' faces fell. Then all eyes turned to Professor Sebastian. Seeing their expectant expressions, he smiled and decided to give them a new lead. "There are many ways to investigate," he said. "Besides consulting books, you can also get information by asking people." "But who can we ask? No one seems to know," someone began. "Think more broadly," Sebastian interrupted. "Besides classmates and professors, don't forget, Hogwarts has a unique population of longtime residents. It's ghosts." The students' faces lit up. Of course, the ghosts. No sooner had class ended than they were in a flurry of planning and task assignments. Harry was sent to Nearly Headless Nick, Cedric was given the Fat Friar, others took on the Grey Lady, the Bloody Baron, and so on. On Gryffindor Tower, Harry found Nearly Headless Nick floating by the portrait hole. "Hello, Nick," Harry said. "I'd like to ask you something." "Oh, Harry," Nick said with a bow that nearly dislodged his head. "Of course. What troubles this Gryffindor pride of mine?" Harry scratched his head, choosing his words carefully. "Do you know anything about the Chamber of Secrets? I heard it was opened a long time ago." Nick's voice sounded hollow. "The Chamber of Secrets? A terrifying bit of legend indeed. To be honest, I don't know much about it. It's said to have been built by Slytherin himself, but I've never seen it, nor do I know when it was first opened." Harry felt a flicker of disappointment, but then thought of another angle. The reopening of the chamber had caused an uproar at the school this time, so the first opening must have provoked something similar. He changed tack. "Nick, do you remember any major events at Hogwarts over the last few decades? Anything that left a deep impression on you?" Nick's expression grew thoughtful. "Ah, Put like that, it does bring something to mind. About 50 years ago, a Gryffindor student was expelled. His wand was broken. It made quite a stir. Hogwarts rarely expels students. I can't recall his name, but that student is now the gamekeeper of the Forbidden Forest. As for why he was expelled, Nick lowered his voice. The situation was complicated. There were rumors that a student had died because of him. He always maintained he was innocent. I don't know the specifics. Gamekeeper of the Forbidden Forest? Hagrid. Harry's mind went cold. He couldn't imagine Hagrid causing a student's death. Could Hagrid have been blamed for opening the chamber and letting its monster loose? It didn't fit that Dumbledore would later make him gamekeeper if he had been guilty. Still, this was the most valuable lead Harry had found so far. "Thank you, Nick," he said sincerely. "Anytime," Nick replied with a faint lopsided smile. "If you need more help, come find me." As Nick drifted away, Harry reviewed what he'd learned. He would have to speak to Hagrid in person. During Auror training the next day, everyone shared their findings. "I found that the first time the chamber was opened was 50 years ago," one student reported. "An older student named Tom Riddle caught the person who opened it and received a special commendation from the school," another added. "I've found a clue that the person Riddle caught may be the current gamekeeper of the Forbidden Forest, Hagrid, but I haven't confirmed it yet," someone else said. Harry immediately defended Hagrid. "I think Hagrid was wrongly accused. He was raising an acromantula at the time, and people mistook that for the chamber's monster. That's why he was expelled." At the thought of the acromantula, as large as a carriage, Harry shuddered. "I found that acromantula and confirmed it. It said the monster in the chamber is the acromantula's natural enemy." Cedric chimed in. "I don't think the chamber's monster is an acromantula either. With the Fat Friar's help, I found the student who was killed back then, Moaning Myrtle. She said she died after seeing a pair of yellow eyes. She didn't actually see what kind of creature it was." Feeling the discussion had reached a turning point, Sebastian clapped his hands to draw attention. "Very good. Thanks to everyone's efforts, our clues are coming together. We have a clearer idea about the kind of creature that might be in the chamber. Has anyone figured out what that monster could be?" Chapter 188, The Mystery is Revealed. The monster in the Chamber of Secrets had finally been identified. The students' spirits lifted as they hurriedly pieced together the clues everyone had mentioned. Cedric had just pointed out that Myrtle had died after seeing a pair of yellow eyes. Harry had said that the monster in the Chamber of Secrets was the natural enemy of the acromantula. There had to be a connection. Cedric's eyes lit up, and he raised his hand. "Professor, I want to confirm something. Is Harry's Parseltongue related to this monster?" Professor Swann nodded approvingly. "Yes, the sound Harry heard was made by this creature." At the professor's confirmation, the students stirred. The monster in the Chamber of Secrets was a snake. That explained why only Harry had heard the strange sound on Halloween. "Professor Swann, I understand now," Harry said excitedly. "That's why the sound I heard came from inside the walls." "That snake was moving through the castle's pipes," Professor Swann replied. Cedric smacked his forehead in annoyance. How had he not made the connection when Harry first revealed his Parseltongue? A snake made perfect sense. Only Harry could hear it. The Slytherin emblem is a serpent, and Slytherin himself was a Parseltongue. Of course, he would leave a snake in the chamber. He'd been slow to join the dots. Now the clues pointed towards snake-like magical creatures. If they still couldn't find the chamber's monster, it would be inexcusable. Cedric pulled out a copy of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and frantically flipped through it. After a moment, he looked up. "Professor, I suspect the creature in the Chamber of Secrets is a basilisk. Combine the points about a snake-type magical creature and the natural enemy of an acromantula," he continued. "Only a basilisk fits." "But," Cedric hesitated, "a basilisk's gaze is deadly. Why was Filch's cat petrified instead of killed?" "I know," Harry's mind raced. Madame Norris probably didn't look directly into the basilisk's eyes. "When we found her that night, the corridor floor was wet," Cedric said. "Madame Norris must have seen the basilisk's eyes in the reflection, which would petrify but not kill." Professor Swann clapped his hands, smiling. "Excellent deductions. Your clues have been very accurate. Cedric and Harry in particular, well done. The monster in the Chamber of Secrets is indeed a basilisk. Congratulations to you all for, through your efforts, solving a mystery that has lasted generations. Seeing several puzzled faces, he continued, for those unfamiliar with a basilisk, I'll give a demonstration using transfiguration. He pointed his wand at the lectern. The wood trembled and warped, the grain flowing like living tissue as the desk creaked and reshaped itself. Dark scales spread across its surface, and the lectern twisted into the shape of a giant serpent. The creature was enormous. Its yellow eyes swept the room, and a chill ran through the students. Voices rose in alarm. "Don't look into its eyes. You'll die," someone shouted. "Professor, don't kill us." "Run." "Calm down," Professor Swann called. "This basilisk is formed from the lectern. It only has the appearance of one, so it poses no real danger." Reassured, the students leaned in to watch as Professor Swann explained. The basilisk is a class XXXX creature, first bred by Herpo the Fowl. Adult basilisks can grow up to 50 feet long. Their natural lifespan exceeds 900 years. The one in the Chamber of Secrets has lived for over a millennium. Besides their deadly gaze, their fangs and enormous size make them lethal. Their thick scales give them strong magical resistance. Spells often bounce off them like they would a dragon. When a basilisk appears, most wizards can only flee. Because of their danger, we cannot allow this basilisk to roam Hogwarts. Our next objective is to find the Chamber of Secrets and eliminate it. Professor Swann paused, watching the eager faces around him. Now, where is the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets? The students offered theories. Slytherin's chamber must be under the Black Lake, one said. His common room is under the lake, so perhaps the chamber is even deeper down. Maybe it's connected to the pipes. The basilisk moves through the castle's plumbing, so follow the pipes and you'll find it. That might be true, another replied, but the pipes run in all directions. We can't tell which leads to the chamber. Professor Swann smiled and gave them a hint. Consider this. What's the common link between the last time the chamber was opened and this time? Harry's hand shot up. Professor, Myrtle was killed by the basilisk in the third-floor girls' lavatory. He looked at the class, eyes bright. On Halloween, we found Filch's cat and the writing on the wall outside that lavatory. Doesn't that mean the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets could be in that lavatory? The students murmured in agreement, many looking at him with renewed hope. Professor Swann waved a hand. Good thinking. To be sure, let's go check that lavatory together and find out. The group swept up to the third floor and stopped at the lavatory entrance when Sebastian halted. His magical perception told him the room was empty, but the Auror training class following him did not know that. For the sake of his reputation, Sebastian chose to be cautious. At Hogwarts, if the speed of learning was 1, the speed of rumor was at least 100. Some students had already noticed the Auror trainees' movements and now stood back, pointing and whispering as Sebastian and his group paused outside the lavatory. Sebastian cleared his throat and spoke loudly for the benefit of the onlookers. This lavatory is almost never used. Apart from Myrtle, you won't usually find students here. But we should be careful. No one wants an embarrassing situation. He looked at 2 older girls and smiled. Could you 2 go in first and check whether anyone's inside? Don't worry, the professor guarantees there's no basilisk at the moment. The 2 girls exchanged glances, drew their wands, and slipped into the washroom. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and they emerged. Professor Swann, it's empty. You can go in. Satisfied, Sebastian led his trainees inside. The curious bystanders wanted to follow, but the lavatory door was locked from within. Their interest turned to loud speculation. I thought I heard him say basilisk. What's a basilisk even doing in the lavatory? I heard the Auror training class is looking into the Chamber of Secrets. Maybe the basilisk is the monster from the chamber. That's ridiculous. If the Chamber of Secrets opened in a lavatory, I'd do a handstand while eating dung. Ignore him. He'll say anything. Inside, the Auror trainees searched quietly, methodically examining every corner. Myrtle floated listlessly, looking around in annoyance. What are you all looking for? You lot are making the place crowded. Cedric brightened and waved at her. Myrtle, you said you died after seeing a pair of yellow eyes. Do you remember where you saw them? Myrtle brightened at being remembered. She floated over to Cedric, circling him. Oh, I remember you, Cedric. Thank you for remembering my story. She smiled at the gathered students and, lowering her voice to a stage whisper, said, Yes, I did see a pair of huge yellow eyes. After I saw them, I felt myself lift, and then I turned into this. As for where I saw those eyes, she pointed to the central wash basin. It was probably right there. The trainees swarmed to the wash basin, inspecting it from every angle. Sebastian nodded at Myrtle. Thank you. That's very helpful. We'll find whoever those eyes belong to. One student called out, There's a small snake carved on the side of the faucet. I think that's a Slytherin symbol, another said. That faucet's never had any water. The students fussed with it, and Myrtle hovered close to remind them of that. Interest piqued. They drew wands and tried a few spells. Revelio! Alohomora! Nothing happened. Harry stepped forward and caught Sebastian's eye. Professor, may I try parcel tongue? Sebastian inclined his head. Harry went to the faucet and, focusing on the tiny snake carving, tried to force himself to think like a snake. The other students muttered, You're still speaking human. Parcel tongue sounds different from what we heard at the dueling club. Harry calmed, forced the image of a real snake into his mind, and let a low, eerie hiss slip from his lips. Open. At the hiss, the faucet flashed white and began to turn. The surrounding tiles shifted as if moved by some slow, inexorable hand. The center of the wash basin split, the stone slabs grinding and rotating against each other until they opened into a dark, circular shaft the size of an adult. The trainees held their breath, peering into the yawning hole. A damp, rotten smell rose from the depths and made the back of their throats prickle. They exchanged looks of stunned disbelief. The entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, here and found so easily? Excitement exploded through them. A few students whooped and bounced. Merlin's bloomers, a mystery 1,000 years old, solved by them. They could hardly contain themselves. Professor, what are we waiting for? Let's go down. Slytherin's chamber is right there. Sebastian raised a hand and stopped them. No, because of the basilisk, this ends here for you. The creature is far too dangerous for students. He let them take in the disappointment, then softened his voice. But congratulations, you found the entrance and solved a mystery that stood for a millennium. In the new history of Hogwarts, there will be a page opened for this moment, and I guarantee your names will be recorded. He turned and pointed to 2 seventh years. Could you two go fetch Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape? The professors will take it from here. Chapter 190, The Hibernating Basilisk, is the good basilisk. Snape arrived first, as always in his signature black robes. He gave Sebastian an expressionless nod and then stood by the pipe opening, staring intently into the dark shaft. His face betrayed nothing, but his heart was not as calm. He had not expected Sebastian to actually lead the students to Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets. That had been a mystery for 1,000 years. It wasn't something that could simply be stumbled upon. Snape's eyes flicked to Sebastian. That stinky Swann always had tricks. He could already picture the headlines. Professor McGonagall arrived next, shock written on her face. Sebastian, is this the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets? What do you need from me? Sebastian stepped forward. Professor McGonagall, more and more students are gathering above. Please keep them back so no one jumps down out of curiosity. As for the chamber itself, let Severus and I, the Slytherin professors, go and deal with it. Then, as if offering the honor, he turned to Snape. Severus, want to take a look with me? Snape feigned indifference but moved first and jumped into the pipe. Sebastian followed, using a levitation charm to control a slow descent. After several twists and turns, they landed on a flat stretch of ground. It was pitch black. Snape flicked his wand and cast Incendio, scanning their surroundings. I didn't expect there to be anything like this under Hogwarts, he said flatly. This should be beneath the Black Lake, several miles at least, Sebastian replied casually. No wonder no one found the chamber before. He gave himself a quick scourgify and shouldered on. The real chamber is still ahead. Let's get this over with before dinner. From the darkness ahead, Sebastian produced a string of magical lanterns from his undetectable extension charm bag. With a small gesture, the lanterns obediently floated forward, attaching themselves to the tunnel ceiling every few meters. One by one they lit, bathing the passage in soft white light and banishing the gloom. The eerie atmosphere vanished. Every inch of stone was revealed. "You came well prepared," Snape remarked. "How could I go underground unprepared?" Sebastian smiled. "I've been waiting for this." Snape almost imperceptibly tightened his lips. Of course he had to show off. If he ignored him, would he ever stop? They walked on until Snape halted. He had spotted something, a huge shed skin. Faint green, scaled, each scale faintly gleaming, the unmistakable cast of a giant serpent. "This is a basilisk's shed skin," Snape said, frowning. "It's larger than I imagined." "Sebastian, no matter how big a basilisk is, it shouldn't be a threat to you." "Why call me?" Snape asked. "You're the head of Slytherin," Sebastian said with a nudge. "How could an expedition into Slytherin's chamber be complete without you? Besides, it's no fun doing this alone. Someone has to witness it." He slipped the shed skin into his bag. "This is top-grade alchemical material. Can't let that go to waste. When we catch the basilisk, I'll let you take some samples first." "You plan to kill it?" Snape's surprise showed. Sebastian smiled. "Kill it? No, that would be wasteful." He waved the air as if offering a lesson. "Think sustainable development. This creature's been underground for 1,000 years. Look at the bones along the path. Starvation was probably more common than feasting. I plan to take it away, let it live comfortably for a while, and periodically harvest venom, blood, and shed skin." "Reasonable, yes?" Snape snorted. "A few decades ago, someone like you might have been hung from a lamppost." "Cut the moralizing." Sebastian returned. "Just tell me if you want a regular supply of venom and blood." They traded barbs as they continued until they reached a stone wall carved with interlaced serpents. "Please, Professor Swann," Snape said with mock civility, "enlighten the potion master and show him how the wall opens." Sebastian stepped forward, hissing at the carvings in a perfect mimicry of Parseltongue. To Snape's surprise and annoyance, the carved snakes writhed and the stone wall slid away. "Impressive," Snape muttered as Sebastian moved to enter. "Sebastian, basilisk eyes are deadly. Have you thought about how you'll deal with them?" "Simple," Sebastian said confidently. "I can handle it with my eyes closed. Don't forget my magical talent. Severus, stay here and don't move. I'll be right back." He closed his eyes and slipped into the chamber, relying on heightened magical perception. As he advanced, his presence announced itself to the great serpent lying in the dark. The basilisk stirred, roused by the powerful "Enemy! Kill!" The beast hissed and began to uncoil and slither toward him. Before it could get far, two thin beams of magic shot through the air and struck its eyes. A blinding jinx hit them. The basilisk screamed, reared back, and instinctively shut its eyes, thrashing in pain. A wave of cold rushed through the chamber. Frost crawled over the creature's scales with startling speed. In moments, the basilisk was trapped in a thick sheath of ice, its enormous body frozen into a monstrous sculpture, save for its great head. Sebastian fastened a blindfold over its sealed eyes, knotting it so tightly there were no gaps, no way for the beast to see. Hundreds of bottles of Draught of Living Death flew from his undetectable extension charm bag, arced into the air, and tipped into the basilisk's forbidding maw. He poured them all down the throat in a practiced stream. After a series of smooth, precise moves, the basilisk's struggling eased. The potion and the cold drove it into a hibernation-like state. Sebastian opened his eyes, circled the immobilized beast with an approving look, then left the chamber and called to Snape. "Severus, come quickly. It's time to harvest. Let's see what Slytherin left behind," he added with a grin, already thinking of venom, blood, and shed skin to be gathered later. "That fast?" Snape stared at Sebastian's triumphant face in disbelief. He dealt with the basilisk in less than 3 minutes? It couldn't be. Snape had only just heard the giant snake's roar. Skeptical, he followed Sebastian into the Chamber of Secrets. Sebastian had already fitted the ceiling with a dozen small magical lights, so every detail of the chamber was visible. Snape's attention was immediately drawn to the basilisk, frozen solid. It was enormous, bigger even than the shed skin they'd seen earlier. A strong scent of Draught of Living Death lingered in the air. The basilisk was asleep. Silent calculations ran through Snape's mind as he assessed how long it would take him to subdue such a creature. His expression darkened. In the time Sebastian claimed, the only way to have defeated the basilisk would have been to kill it outright. Capturing such a monster alive in that span of time was beyond his abilities. Damn it, How could there be such a gulf in strength between him and that stinky Swann? Severus, what are you staring at? Sebastian interrupted his thoughts. Come on, let's collect some venom first. He flicked his wand and harvested 2 vials of basilisk venom from the creature's mouth, then pried several of its fangs free. Seeing that Snape was about to protest, Sebastian promptly handed him one of the venom vials, cutting off any argument. This is your share. Am I generous enough, brother? Snape opened his mouth, then swallowed the complaint. For basilisk venom, it was hardly worth a quarrel. With that vial, he could return to his studies and work on potion formulas involving snake venom. After a moment's thought, he drew nearer to the beast and collected 2 full bottles of its blood as well. When the harvesting was done, Snape finally lifted his head and studied the Chamber of Secrets itself. Stone pillars ran down both sides of the hall, each carved with coiling serpents. The carvings were so lifelike, they seemed about to slide off the pillars and flick their tongues. At the far end loomed a massive statue, nearly as tall as the chamber. Its face was oddly ape-like, the forehead furrowed by deep wrinkles that time had carved into it. Sparse, long beards hung from its chin to the hem of the stone robe, lending the figure a strange gravity. Its gaze was cast down, as if scrutinizing intruders. Salazar Slytherin, Snape murmured, stepping closer to the statue. He examined the face with a kind of reverence. So the stories were true. He focused on bloodline magic. He experimented on himself, even altering his appearance. What a pure and great man, he added under his breath, feeling an unexpected kinship. As a fellow investigator of magic's deepest mysteries, he resonated with Slytherin's single-minded pursuit. Even self-experimentation, even being misunderstood, these were sacrifices he recognized. Who was to call Slytherin evil? If anything, he'd been ruthless in his methods, but not without purpose. Why are you spacing out again, Severus? Sebastian urged. Hurry up, find a more hidden room. Snape shot him an annoyed look. That stinky Swann always reduced everything to usefulness and profit. But Sebastian had a point. Salazar Slytherin would hardly have built a chamber like this only as a lair for a pet. This was the perfect secluded place for research. Snape drew his wand and began to search. Sebastian, however, stood still and closed his eyes, letting his magical senses radiate through the hall like a tuning radar. After a long moment, he opened his eyes and walked to a blank stretch of wall to the right of the statue. There are only 3 places here with traces of magic, he said. The entrance, the statue's mouth, where the basilisk slipped through, and this wall. The secret study has to be behind this. He considered the matter a moment. In the original tale, Lord Voldemort's Parseltongue command to summon the basilisk from the Horcrux diary was an invocation to Salazar Slytherin himself. What command would open the private door? Sebastian reached out and spoke a single word in Parseltongue. At once, 2 invisible serpent motifs shimmered into being on the wall and slid apart. The stone split neatly down the middle and slid away to reveal a narrow passage. That's simple, he said, half to himself. He had expected a long chant or a cryptic phrase, but of course Slytherin would not have made his own entrance cumbersome. Severus, Sebastian called, unable to hide his excitement. I found it. Hurry! They stepped inside. The secret study was utterly dry, a stark contrast to the damp vastness of the chamber outside. The decor was simple and solemn. Shelves in the corners held rows of magical tomes and manuscripts. Some bindings were browned with age, but the air threw with enchantment. These books had endured and were still readable. In the center stood a large work table strewn with old alchemical apparatus that looked as if it hadn't been used in centuries. Opposite it sat a plain wooden table, covered in parchment scrolls, whose ink had faded to a gentle yellow but remained legible. Sebastian moved to the table and began to read the script carefully. As he worked, his smile grew crooked and amused. The handwriting was painfully familiar, identical to the scrawl in the Horcrux diary. Voldemort had discovered this room too and spent a portion of his early years studying here. He glanced at Snape and pointed at the parchment. Severus, guess who was the last person to visit here? Chapter 192, Slytherin's Magic Notebook. The image of the last person to visit the chamber leapt into Snape's mind, unbidden. You know who. The realization hit him like a blow. All the pieces fell into place at once. Sebastian, he said, voice low and tight. Are you saying the one who opened the chamber this time was you-know-who? Sebastian's expression turned grave. Like last year, did he sneak into Hogwarts again? Whose body is he possessing now? Have you found the host? Don't worry, Severus. Sebastian offered a reassuring smile. You-know-who didn't physically sneak into Hogwarts this time. It was a dark artifact containing his consciousness that misled a student and opened the chamber. I've already dealt with it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let the students go about their investigations. You know he's not one to be generous. Snape's tension eased a fraction. Sebastian went on, nodding toward the parchment on the table. But you guessed right. The last visitor here was indeed you-know-who. Look at this, he said, pointing to the neat handwriting. This was left 50 years ago. 50 years? Snape murmured as he read. The script was precise and deliberate. He must have been a student then. That's right, Sebastian nodded. This Halloween is actually the second time the chamber has been opened. You-know-who first opened it while he was at school and released the basilisk. A Muggle-born girl was killed, Myrtle. He framed Hagrid and received a special contribution award for discovering the chamber. That medal is still on display in the exhibition hall. Putting aside his methods, Sebastian added as he read more, his knowledge back then was astonishing. The ideas in these parchments are unusual and insightful. Enough about him. Let's focus on what Slytherin himself left. He waved his wand, straightening the scattered parchments. Snape snapped out of his thoughts and carefully picked up an old magic journal. He read aloud the founder's entries. Today, that fellow Godric proposed an intriguing notion. He wants wizards' bodies to possess superior magical resistance, like dragons. Then a wizard could withstand an attack and cut off an enemy's head with a single strike. A romantic thought, but fanciful. Wizards are already blessed by fate to add dragon-like defense and magic resistance. I met an animagus today, and a sudden revelation came to me. Gryffindor's conviction may be achievable. Animai have always been thought limited to mundane animals. No one has been known to become a truly magical creature. They lack ambition and the spirit of exploration. They fear becoming monsters. These mediocre minds never grasp that every magical advance carries uncontrollable risk. If you lack the courage to commit yourself to magic, you will never progress. Starting now, I will undertake a grand experiment, improve the animagus transformation to allow wizards to become powerful magical creatures at will. Wait and see. I am Slytherin. Snape felt a jolt of shock. He had never imagined Slytherin's ambitions were so enormous. Animagi usually transformed into ordinary animals. Professor McGonagall into a tabby, for example. No one had ever used the animagus process to become a magical creature. That a founder would attempt to overturn such a rule seemed arrogant, or perhaps simply supremely confident. Standing at the pinnacle of his era, Slytherin trusted his intellect above all. Snape turned the page. The entries that followed were dense theoretical arguments, the feasibility of enhancing animagus, step-by-step logical proofs. He reached for a second journal impatiently. From a theoretical standpoint, there is room to improve the animagus transformation. After much deliberation, my deductions hold. Yet transforming into a magical creature faces two major obstacles. First, when an animagus becomes a normal animal, magic is required mostly during the change itself, placing little burden on the wizard. To become a magical creature, however, the required magic during transformation increases exponentially. Ordinary wizards simply lack the reserves to sustain such an intense process. Worse, once transformed, a vast and continuous magical expenditure is required to sustain the creature's size and unique magical nature. This alone would rule out 99% of wizards. I believe my magic can meet this demand, so this is manageable for me. The second issue is more troublesome. Improving the animagus potion requires adding blood from the target magical creature. Process that blood properly is a tremendous challenge. Blood contains the full information of a being. For magical creatures, the information in their blood is immense, a heavy burden for the wizard attempting the transformation. More complex still, blood carries not only physiology, but intangible elements: will, personality, emotions. For safety, the blood must be treated carefully, otherwise successful transformation is near impossible. No more theory on paper. I must experiment to gather first-hand data. First experiment, transformation failed. I processed the blood too harshly, much information was lost. Second experiment, dragon blood. The dragon's consciousness was too violent. I stopped the transformation before losing my mind. Fortunately, my strength is sufficient. An ordinary person would have become a monster. Third experiment, I chose a Bigfoot, an ape-like magical creature. Its form is close to humans and powerful. Still, it failed again. The precise cause is unknown, only a terrible sense of bloodline conflict. This failure left after effects. My appearance began to shift toward an ape, but this is a necessary sacrifice. I will continue until I succeed. Snape turned the pages. The journals cataloged every step of Slytherin's trials, refined methods for processing blood, sensations during transformations, reflections on failures, plans for improvement. His mood grew heavier as he read the final entries. Nearly 10 years of experiments and no success. The bloodline conflict grows more pronounced. No matter how I alter the processing, I cannot avoid it. I am weary. Perhaps I was wrong from the start. Animagus cannot be improved. I was arrogant. I will leave Hogwarts. These notes will remain in the chamber. The basilisk will remain too. My dear little guardian, I hate to part with you. But Hogwarts needs you more. If one day the school is in danger, you must step forward and defend it in my stead. Snape closed the journal and exhaled slowly. So this was the truth behind the Chamber of Secrets and why Slytherin left the basilisk. Over the centuries, the creature's mind had dulled, and in more recent times, Lord Voldemort had seized control of it again. That explained why there had been no earlier episodes of the basilisk attacking students. Snape set the journal down and faced Sebastian. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "There's nothing here you were looking for." Slytherin left no separate inheritance. Perhaps those old magical tomes could ease your regret. Sebastian looked up from the journal and smiled at Snape. "Who said there isn't an inheritance? These journals are it. If I can complete Slytherin's unfinished research, isn't that a kind of inheritance? Let's go upstairs. We shouldn't keep Professor McGonagall waiting." As for the experiment, Sebastian's smile grew confident. "I already have some ideas." Chapter 193, Basilisk Exhibition. The third-floor bathroom was crowded. The Auror trainees refused to leave, anxiously waiting for news about the two professors who had gone down into the Chamber of Secrets. Harry stood among them, face drawn, eyes flicking constantly toward the open pipe that led to the chambers. Ever since Myrtle had started recounting the details of her death over and over, he felt only more unsettled. A basilisk's gaze could kill with a single glance. How had the professors dealt with it? Had they had to fight blindfolded? If so, how could they possibly counter its strikes? The two who'd gone down were the ones he trusted most at Hogwarts. He didn't want to imagine them harmed in any way. Before he could think any more, he heard the flutter of robes in the pipes. Harry straightened instantly and peered at the opening. Two figures shot out on flying brooms. Sebastian and Snape. They looked calm, as if returning from an ordinary errand. Relief flooded Harry. They were alive. Relief vanished a moment later when something huge began to rise from the pipe. A basilisk, its eyes covered by an eye patch, emerged, its massive body encased in glistening ice. Even immobile, its size made everyone recoil. Professor McGonagall's face tightened with concern for the students. On Halloween, the only victim had been Filch's cat, an old Mercy. The sight of the enormous creature sent the students into a low uproar. "Merlin's beard, is that a basilisk? Is it dead?" "It's enormous. How did the professors manage to subdue it? If I'd run into that on Halloween, I'd have fainted on the spot." A few braver students edged forward, trying to get a closer look. Sebastian hopped off his broom and smiled. "The basilisk isn't dead," he said. "It's in a very deep sleep and won't wake up for some time. No need to worry." "The bathroom's too cramped for this," he added. "I'll bring it out into the open so everyone can see properly." With a flick of his wand, Sebastian began to lead the ice-bound serpent out. Word spread across the castle like wildfire. Students poured from every corridor until a crowd had gathered on the grounds in front of the castle. Sunlight made the basilisk's frozen scales glitter. Even still, it radiated menace. Conversation buzzed. How had such a beast survived 1,000 years in the Chamber of Secrets, and how had the professors subdued it? Sebastian raised his wand and gently lowered the basilisk to the ground. The ice melted away, leaving its scales to shimmer with a cold, eerie sheen. "Attention, everyone," he called, his voice carrying clearly. "The basilisk is asleep. You may observe, but do not approach it, and do not, under any circumstances, touch the eye patch." To prevent any foolhardy attempt to lift the patch, he drew a ring of protective runes around the creature. Any student under 20 who crossed the line would be ejected. Satisfied, he stepped to the edge of the crowd and joined the other professors. Professor Kettleburn didn't linger with the others. He and Hagrid strode straight up to the basilisk and began stroking its scales with unabashed delight, earning envious glances from the students. By evening, after a long afternoon of explanation and interviews with the press, Sebastian had arranged for the basilisk to be taken to a magical reptile breeding farm run by Swann Alchemy. When he finally returned home, he washed up and collapsed onto the sofa with his head in Mia's lap. "I'm exhausted," he complained, half whining. "Give me a head massage, please. I can't keep going without one." Mia smiled and began to knead his temples with practiced fingers. "Your Auror trainees were impressive. You actually found the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets." "Of course," Sebastian said with a puff of pride. "It's hardly the first secret I've uncovered." He turned to make himself more comfortable and brightened. "We even found notes from Slytherin in the chamber." Mia stopped and looked up, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "Notes? About what?" "Secret spells. They're records of experiments Slytherin used to try to improve the animagus transformation," Sebastian said, slowing his voice for effect. "Animagus?" Mia's interest sharpened. "In what way? To get a higher success rate?" Sebastian laughed and reached out to pinch her chin. Slytherin had a grander aim. He wanted to use animagus to turn wizards into powerful magical creatures. "Did he succeed?" she asked. "Unfortunately, no," Sebastian admitted. "He failed. But I'm planning to continue the research. The idea of transforming into a true magical creature is too tempting to ignore." Mia's fingers paused mid-motion, worry knitting her brow. "Are you sure that's wise? Failed animagus transformations already put many in St. Mungo's. They were just trying to become ordinary animals. Turning into something more dangerous increases the risk." Sebastian took her hand. "I know what I'm doing. I won't be reckless with my own life. If I'm not 100% confident, I won't proceed." "You'll see when the time comes," he said, settling back and closing his eyes as Mia resumed the massage. "Enough talk. Just keep massaging me," he murmured, and let himself sink into the comfort of her care. Chapter 194, Only a Fool Would Choose a Giant Monster. As time passed, the sensational Chamber of Secrets incident gradually stopped dominating the students' conversations. Life at Hogwarts steadied. Classes resumed their rhythms, Quidditch matches grew intense again, and the school recovered its usual calm. Sebastian slipped back into his packed schedule as if nothing had happened. He showed up everywhere: Muggle studies, Auror training, the dueling club, the alchemy club, and his emotion magic lessons with Luna. He always seemed impossibly busy, and yet everything ran smoothly under his hand. He didn't, however, forget what he'd learned in the chamber. Sebastian devoted a great deal of time to studying Slytherin's notes in depth, especially the experimental records on improving the animagus transformation. He cross-referenced everything he could find on animagi and analyzed the differences among known cases. For ordinary witches and wizards, animagus form is typically tied to personality and inner essence. Much like a Patronus, the animal reflects something innate and is not a matter of conscious choice. Slytherin's approach, however, overturned that assumption. His experiments tried to force an animagus form by using the blood of magical creatures. In other words, rather than letting a wizard's nature determine the form, the magical information in the creature's blood would impose a specific shape. As he worked through the records, Sebastian began to see why Slytherin's experiments failed. First, Slytherin used different creatures' blood in successive trials. That meant his own blood was contaminated by residual magical properties from earlier experiments. The next time he tried, his body still carried traces, bloodline signatures, from the previous creature. From the third experiment onward, he began to feel bloodline conflicts, and those conflicts only intensified. It's the tragedy of a pioneer. Without precedent, you grope forward and can't always turn back. A conclusion formed in Sebastian's mind. To transform into a powerful magical creature via an animagus procedure, you should use the blood of only one species. And you'd best succeed on the first try. There's no data on what happens if you reuse the same blood after an initial failure. That meant extreme caution both in choosing the creature and in the experimental process itself. Second, if success is the goal, the ideal would be to remove all elements of will and emotion from the creature's blood, leaving only physiological information. That way, during the transformation, the wizard's own will could occupy the creature's body without interference. Slytherin's notes suggested this was a major problem. When he used dragon blood in his second experiment, the dragon's consciousness and emotions in the blood were too violent, and the procedure was interrupted. Reading that, Sebastian felt a pang of regret. Slytherin's dragon trial might have been the closest thing to success. If someone had been able to better neutralize the dragon's will, perhaps with emotion magic, the outcome might have been very different. It became clear that Slytherin's methods for handling the blood were crude. He was a genius in many respects, but he lacked refined techniques for dealing with complex emotional imprints. If Rowena Ravenclaw had been involved, her mastery of emotion magic might have stripped away will and feeling more cleanly. But experiments of that age were intensely private, and Slytherin's pride would not have let him ask for help. Had the four founders collaborated, the results could have been dramatically different. Now, with the advantage of knowledge and standing on the shoulders of two giants, Sebastian felt confident that he could finish what Slytherin started. The remaining question was which magical creature to choose. His first thought was the phoenix. Seeing Dumbledore's phoenix so often made the idea seductive. Rebirth from ash and the ability to apparate, those powers are hard to resist. But a phoenix's physique is fragile compared to other magical beasts. Its magical resistance isn't high. Against a truly powerful foe, rebirth is meaningless if you can't survive the initial encounter. Rebirth is more escape than victory. He considered the Eastern Qilin next. The Qilin can perceive souls and sense purity of heart, an admirable trait, but one Sebastian found off-putting. He didn't want to be forced into a form that could so intensely perceive moral filth when he needed a body, not a conscience. He ran the list: Thunderbird, with weather control; Demiguise, with invisibility and precognition; even the Dementor, which consumes humans' happiness, and more. As he researched, a pattern emerged. The more unique or exotic the creature's talent, the more complex the information encoded in its blood. That complexity would place a heavier cognitive and magical burden on the wizard and drop the chance of a clean transformation. So if he wanted a higher success rate, he should choose creatures whose blood carried simpler, more physical information. After comparing possibilities, two stood out: dragon and troll. Dragons are among the most powerful beings in the magical world, but they aren't burdened with excessive arcane quirks. Their scales give them exceptional magical resistance, their bodies are monstrously strong, and their magical profile is comparatively straightforward, precisely the sort of physiological data that would not overwhelm a wizard's will. The drawback is obvious. Dragons are enormous and would require an enormous amount of magic to become, but in exchange, the wizard gains raw durability and strength. No flashy special talent, but a form that compensates for a human's physical shortcomings. The troll, on the other hand, well, only someone with a screw loose would pick a troll. It's clumsy, brutish, and its usefulness as an animagus form is dubious at best. After weighing the factors, Sebastian settled on the dragon. Its simplicity of magical signature, its physical advantages, and its straightforward defensive properties made it the best choice to increase the odds of success. The dragon would be demanding, but the potential payoff was enormous. As for the troll, he gave a short, amused snort and pushed the thought aside. Only a fool would choose a giant monster like that. Chapter 195, Animagus Transformation. Although he had decided on a dragon for his animagus form, Sebastian still had to choose which kind. In the magical world, there were many species: Norwegian ridgeback, Hungarian horntail, Chinese fireball, Australian opaleye, Ukrainian ironbelly, each with different strengths. After weighing the options, he narrowed it to two: The Ukrainian ironbelly was the largest and toughest of all dragons, its thick scales giving it enormous physical defense. The Norwegian ridgeback, by contrast, was known for hard scales with strong resistance to magic. Its hide could shrug off most spells and even reflect some attacks. Since larger body size demanded far more magical power to maintain an animagus form, Sebastian settled on the Norwegian ridgeback. His little dragon, Norbert, finally had a purpose. At the dragon enclosure, Norbert spent his days eating and sleeping. In a year, he had grown nearly to adult size and lived very comfortably. Calmly, confidently, Sebastian drew 2 large tubes of dragon blood for processing. With the dragon blood almost ready, he began the preparations for his animagus transformation. On a full moon night, he placed a mandrake leaf in his mouth. He'd expected it to be simple. Instead, he discovered how difficult it was. He had to chew slowly and carefully to avoid destroying the leaf. And even sleeping became tricky. He had to be careful not to swallow or spit it out in his sleep. To make things easier, he used magic to fix the leaf against his upper palate so it no longer interfered with daily life. The constant foreign object, however, stimulated his salivary glands, and he found himself drooling at night. It was embarrassing. Fortunately, Mia didn't mind. A month passed. On the next full moon, he removed the leaf, put it into a small crystal vial of his saliva to let it absorb pure moonlight, and added a strand of his hair, along with the special dew and a death's head hawkmoth chrysalis. Under the moonlight, the mixture shifted in subtle, indescribable ways. The solution had to be stored perfectly. Any sunlight would ruin it. So he sealed the vial, dug a hiding place in the forbidden forest, and buried the box deep underground. Animagi were rare because the process was so exacting. After the burial, every sunrise and sunset, Sebastian would touch the tip of his wand to his chest and whisper the incantation, Amato, Animo, Animato, Animagus. Over time, he began to feel a second heartbeat when he chanted. With the preparations complete, all that remained was regular chanting and waiting for a natural thunderstorm. Weather conjured by magic wouldn't do. The storm had to be real. That meant waiting could take weeks or months. Winter storms were scarce. It wasn't until Easter that half the country was hit by a thunderous squall. As thunder cracked and rain came down in sheets, Sebastian and Mia went to where he had buried the vial. With a flick of his wand, the earth parted and the little box shot into his hand. He uncorked the vial and found the once turbid mixture had become clear and translucent blood red. Impervious to water and fire, he murmured, satisfied. He made sure no rainwater would contaminate it, then took out the processed dragon blood and a juice made from a blood-dissolving herb. He poured the potion from the vial, stirred the herb juice in, and added a teaspoon of dragon blood. The mixture reacted violently for a moment and then calmed into an even deeper, more profound crimson. Exactly as the notes had predicted, success felt within reach. "Go on," Mia said, concern and encouragement in her voice. "You can do it. If anything goes wrong, I'll save you." Sebastian met her worried look, nodded, and didn't make any promises. He steadied himself, pressed his wand to his chest, and chanted the incantation again. Amato, Animo, Animato, Animagus. The spell echoed through the rain-soaked forest, mingling with thunder and pounding drops. He tilted his head back and drank the potion in one gulp. The taste was strange. Warmth rolled through his body, then flared into a burning heat as if flames ran in his veins. A dragon's image blossomed in his mind. No violent foreign consciousness tearing at him, only the presence of the dragon guided by his own will. Just make this one transformation work. Sebastian frowned as his body began to tremble uncontrollably. His heart hammered so hard it felt like it would burst from his chest. A violent pain surged up from his soles to the top of his head. He could feel his bones lengthening, his muscles swelling and reshaping, as if every part of him were being rebuilt. Fingertips thickened, nails twisted into sharp claws, and his legs extended and thickened to support a mass that was rapidly becoming enormous. His skin tightened, then split and hardened into thick scales. Each scale's formation brought a sting of agony, but as his body became armored, the pain eased, and a raw, overwhelming strength filled him. His spine convulsed and deformed. 2 enormous wings grew and unfurled like torn curtains, their span blotting out the clearing. The wings pulsed with power. He felt he could launch into the sky with a single beat. His head elongated into a dragon's snout, dagger-like teeth pushed through his jaws. His eyes narrowed into vertical pupils, and his vision sharpened until distant movements in the rain-drenched forbidden forest were crystal clear. A low, resonant roar escaped him, and a column of bright flame tore through the curtain of rain, parting the storm clouds above. Luckily, they were deep within the forbidden forest. If anyone at Hogwarts had seen this, Hagrid, especially, he would have braved the storm immediately to investigate. Success, Sebastian thought. The dragon was the right choice. The size, the scales, the raw power, all of it filled him with an unshakable sense of security. He wanted to bellow his triumph to the sky. He had achieved what Slytherin left unfinished, a true magical animagus, a dragon. Not enough. The dragon's greedy instinct seemed to feed his ambition, and it grew like wildfire. He remembered an essay he'd written last semester. Conjecture on a second-stage animagus transformation. Under normal circumstances, an animagus transforms into an ordinary animal and gains only limited practical advantage. This paper proposes a conjecture. After completing an animagus transformation, could a wizard then apply human transfiguration to reshape that animal form into a beast-human form? Through such a second-stage transformation, the animal's traits could be integrated into the wizard's body. For example, an animagus dog later transfigured into a beast-human form might grant the wizard markedly increased agility and strength. In existing animagus cases, the animal form is essentially identical to a mundane animal and lacks inherent magic, so it cannot be further transfigured. The only magical aspect is the voluntary reversion to human form. Thus, the idea of a second-stage transformation has remained theoretical, with no practical verification. That had been the sticking point, until now. A dragon wasn't an ordinary animal. It was a genuinely magical creature. He could feel magic thrumming through every scale. This was the moment to test his hypothesis. The dragon form gave him tremendous power and magical resilience, but it was cumbersome. He needed a balance of strength and agility. He decided to compress the dragon's power into a more compact shape, a dragon-human form. He emptied his mind, recalled human anatomy with razor focus, and guided the magic with human transfiguration. He drew on everything he knew and began to reshape the dragon carefully and deliberately. It worked. Energy flowed through him, and the dragon's contours shifted with precision. The massive claws slimmed and became more nimble while keeping razor tips. The forelimbs elongated and reshaped into muscular human-like arms capable of explosive force. The broad, curved back straightened into a human torso, still armored in hard scales that lent a savage elegance. The tail receded, the wings contracted into a compact, cape-like structure that could unfurl when needed to grant flight. The snout shortened, the mouth assumed a more human shape while retaining sharp teeth and a crushing bite. Horns rose from his forehead like a crown. When the transformation finished, Sebastian stood 3 meters tall, an enormous dragon-human hybrid. He lowered his head and regarded himself through vertical pupils. It was perfect. He'd sacrificed some sheer bulk, but the result was deadlier, powerful, and far more agile. He clenched a fist, part claw, part hand, and felt the intoxicating mix of strength and speed. Even more startling, the stacked curse returned, coalescing around him like a familiar aura. He could feel magic again. The implication was enormous. He could cast spells in this dragon-human form. A grin spread across his face. This was an ideal melee wizard form. He could, as the sword-wielders of Gryffindor might, hold a wand in one hand and a weapon in the other, clearing any obstacle in his path. Mia stood nearby, wand clutched in both hands, eyes wide. At first, the dragon transformation had awed and thrilled her. The roar, the flames, but then Sebastian's body had shifted again. Her chest tightened with fear. What had gone wrong? Was he in trouble? Had he lost control? She tightened her grip on her wand, ready to rush forward if needed. Then the dragon human stabilized before her. Questions flooded her mind. What kind of form was this? She'd never seen anything like it. If she had to compare it to anything in the magical world, only a werewolf's half-human, half-beast silhouette was remotely similar. She watched Sebastian clench his fists about to speak when he fixed his gaze on her. His stare was intense, and a low voice rumbled out. "Mia, raise your wand and cast a spell at me with all your might." Chapter 197, Powerful Dragon Form. Mia instantly went on high alert and stepped back. She couldn't understand why Sebastian wanted her to attack him. Had he really lost his mind, affected by the dragon's ferocity? But when she looked into his eyes, there was no madness there at all. Seeing her expression, Sebastian hurried to explain. "Don't worry, I'm fine," he said. "I just wanted you to attack me to test this form's strength." Mia hesitated. She had too many questions. "Sebastian, is this your animagus? Why doesn't it look like a dragon?" Sebastian laughed with obvious pride. "Heh, this is my own development, Animagus Stage 2, a brand new dragon human form. Isn't it awesome?" "Animagus Stage 2? Mia's eyes lit up. "You wrote about that in school, and Professor McGonagall praised your ideas. You actually turned theory into reality. That's incredible." Looking at Mia's admiring face, Sebastian beamed. "Of course, you shouldn't have to look twice at who your husband is." He moved closer and offered his arm. "Come on, feel it. See how solid it is." Mia reached out and squeezed his arm. "It's really solid." She looked up at him and teased. "The two of us together look like Beauty and the Beast. Can you still turn into a dragon?" she asked. "Of course," he nodded. "From now on, when I animagus, I can choose between the full dragon and the dragon human form." "Perfect. It's pouring out. Let's do a quick test of this body's strength, then head back to the castle." Sebastian withdrew the stacked shield charms he had been using and stood ready, daring her to attack. Mia raised her wand and, cautiously, cast Stupefy. A red jet of light shot across the clearing and struck him in the chest, only to bounce off without effect. "That was too weak, Mia. Use something stronger." Mia hesitated, then flicked her wand and shouted, "Incendio!" A scorching sheet of flame spewed from her wand and engulfed Sebastian. The rain couldn't put it out for a few moments, but as the fire died down, he still stood, unharmed. "This much flame is nothing for a dragon," he said. "Try Sectum Sempra." Mia frowned. "Are you sure? Snape's spell is one of the most powerful attacks." "Don't worry, my defenses are stronger than you think," Sebastian replied with a confident smile. Mia sighed. Once he decided something, he rarely changed his mind and lifted her wand. Sectum Sempra. An invisible blade shot through the air at impossible speed. With his dragon-enhanced vision, Sebastian tracked it easily. "Good timing," he said. He stepped forward, thrust out his right hand, and slapped the spell aside. Crack! The spell was knocked away as if it had hit a wall. A few shallow scratches marked the scales on his hand, then healed almost instantly. Mia stared, disbelief written across her face. "Impossible. Even a real dragon would be hurt by that. We've tested it before." Sebastian laughed. "Concentrated essence, this dragon human form is even stronger than I expected." He was thrilled. The test confirmed that both his physical defense and magical resistance were exceptional. Mia had trained with him and wasn't just a pretty face. Her combat ability was only slightly below Snape's. "Back up a little," Sebastian said. "I'll test the offensive power." He picked out a large tree on the edge of the clearing, one that would take two people to wrap their arms around. He pushed off, a blur through the rain, and was at the tree in a heartbeat. "Aura!" He extended his right hand. His palm hardened into a blade and struck the trunk with the force of a meteor. Crack! Wood and sawdust sprayed everywhere as the massive tree split cleanly in two where he hit. With a thunderous crash, it toppled, splashing mud and debris. "Merlin's beard," Mia whispered, stunned. She couldn't believe he had such destructive power with his bare hands. Speed, strength, defense, all top tier. Ordinary wizards would stand no chance. Sebastian looked at his right hand, still unsatisfied. The impact had been powerful, but his palm felt strangely empty. He decided he needed a proper weapon. A greatsword, like a Gryffindor hero? No, a spiked club would be perfect with this kind of strength. As he pictured it, he grinned at Mia. "Don't be surprised. Watch your husband do something even more amazing." His wand appeared in his hand. He waved it at the broken tree. Reparo. The scattered sawdust and fallen trunk moved as if pulled by invisible threads, flying back to the break and slotting perfectly into place. The wood knit together until the tree stood whole again, as if nothing had happened. Mia was speechless, utterly shattered in her expectations. He could take dragon form and still cast spells. This dragon-human form had almost no weaknesses. Ordinary wizards didn't stand a chance anymore. Chapter 198, Old Peter's Urgent Request. Holding the wand, Sebastian could feel it. His spells seemed much stronger. Was it just his imagination? He decided to try another incantation to be sure. He raised the wand, aimed at the overcast sky, and whispered, "Cloudburst." A thick red bolt of magic shot from the wand and tore into the clouds. The force exploded overhead. The dark mass rolled back and scattered from the impact, revealing a patch of clear blue. Sunlight poured through, bathing them in a warm, golden light. Sebastian grinned. The spell had been dense and powerful. Its overall potency had definitely increased. How much, exactly, he would need proper instruments to measure. He stepped toward Mia. As he approached, his figure shrank, and he reverted to his gentle, refined appearance. He grabbed her hand eagerly. "This test is too crude. While Swann Alchemy's staff are off for Easter, let's go there and run precise diagnostics. That way, I can also have a weapon forged that suits my dragon human form," he added. "From now on, I want to be a melee wizard." Mia's eyes brightened. She was curious about how much his body had improved. They returned to the castle and used the fireplace to Swann Alchemy headquarters, where they began testing Sebastian's physical data. A minor argument broke out when they discussed weapon design. "Why a spiked club?" Mia grimaced. "It's so ugly." "I think we should make a great sword," she continued. "With your dragon human form, it would be incredibly cool, like a knight." Sebastian sounded exasperated. "A spiked club is cool too. You've seen how powerful the dragon human form is. A greatsword could break under the strain. A spiked club is tough and durable. You won't have to worry about upkeep. For that form, the best attack is pure overwhelming force." "But," Mia hesitated, "a spiked club is really ugly." "It's simple," Sebastian chuckled. "We've got the galleons. We can forge a greatsword too, and a suit of armor. You can wear it, just for me." At the suggestion, Mia smiled and agreed. Swann Alchemy worked fast. After receiving Sebastian's specifications, they forged everything he wanted in 2 weeks. On Friday afternoon, the items were inspected, packed, and delivered to Swann Manor. Once the Swann Alchemy craftsman left, Sebastian tore open the ornate package. He barely glanced at the silver-white armor and the gleaming greatsword. He transformed into his dragon human form, hefted the spiked club, and headed for the small training yard. The weapon was nearly 2 meters long, like a massive baseball bat, matte black and imposing. The upper shaft bristled with dense, blunt studs, rounded metal knobs, not sharp spikes. The handle was a carefully crafted grip, carved with intricate runes meant to absorb shock and improve control. Sebastian ran his fingers over the runes. The cold, heavy metal felt perfect. The weight, the balance, everything was right. He planted himself in the center of the yard, drew a deep breath, and with a surge of power in his right arm, swung the club. It blurred, producing multiple after-images. The air whistled like a low roar. The wind from the swing seemed to tear itself apart, shrieking. His motions accelerated. The club moved like an extension of his arm, sweeping low, smashing down, whipping arcs of wind. One horizontal sweep shattered a stone statue at the edge of the yard into fragments that exploded into dust. "Statues don't move," he muttered. "That's not satisfying." He called to Mia, who watched from the sidelines. "Throw in some mobile alchemical puppets. Set them to top speed." Mia obliged. As the clockwork figure skittered around, Sebastian leapt, raised the club, and brought it down on one. Thunderclap 8 trigrams. Crack. The rugged puppet shattered like porcelain. The club didn't slow. It slammed into the ground with a thudding boom. Bang. The earth split beneath the impact, fissures spidering outward. That was the kind of force he wanted. He thrust off his legs, reappeared before another puppet, and swung again. 80. The club reduced it to shards. Under Mia's adoring gaze, Sebastian darted across the yard, smashing puppet after puppet into debris. After a long run, he finally sheathed the club and laughed heartily as he surveyed the devastated training ground. Satisfying. So satisfying. This is a man's romance. "Had your fun?" Mia teased, nudging him toward the house. "Put on the armor and the greatsword. I want to see a handsome knight." All right, Sebastian grinned. "You go change into a princess dress. Let's have a costume party tonight. We'll have a blast." He had just stepped into the living room when his undetectable extension charm began to vibrate violently. An emergency contact. He didn't dare delay. Quickly canceling his transformation, he opened the charm and pulled out the vibrating box. Inside, old Peter's panting face filled the two-way mirror. "Boss, Fenrir Greyback's tracks have appeared on Ben Nevis, old Peter said. I brought 3 others with me, and we walked right into his trap. He's leading over a dozen radical werewolves in pursuit to corner us. It's a rare chance. We don't want to give it up. We could apparate away, but we're fighting and running. We're asking for your help. If it's too dangerous, don't hesitate. Use apparition and get out, Sebastian said, his voice calm and firm. Safety first. There's no need to catch Greyback at the cost of your lives. We're fine, boss. We're leading Greyback and his pack on a chase through the forest. They won't catch us anytime soon. All right, I'll be there as fast as I can. Sebastian closed the two-way mirror, kissed Mia goodbye, and apparated to Ben Nevis. He produced a scrying glass to pinpoint old Peter's location, transformed into his dragon-human form again, and cast a disillusionment charm. He spread his wings and launched into the sky. Fenrir Greyback and his rabid pack of werewolf followers. May this be entertaining. Chapter 199. What kind of monster is this? Old Peter ran through the dense forest, chest burning, not daring to stop for a single breath. Fallen leaves and dead branches cracked underfoot like warnings. Outwardly, he kept his voice steady, but he could feel Greyback and his pack closing in. He could almost feel their hungry eyes on his back. As dusk fell, he had ordered the other 3 herb garden workers to apparate away for safety, staying behind as bait. Greyback was slippery. If he lost this chance, he didn't know when he'd get another. He would stall for time until Sebastian arrived and end Greyback's reign. A pair of tall shadows slipped from the bushes ahead, wands raised, eyes fixed on him like on trapped prey. Peter's stomach dropped. He tried to dodge to the right and saw more glowing eyes in the undergrowth. He cut left and found snarling figures blocking the path. They were everywhere, surrounded. He stopped and turned toward the way he'd come. Fingers found the one-use port key in his pocket. He inhaled, preparing to buy a few more seconds. Then something enormous landed before him. A gust of wind swept through the trees, sand and leaves stinging everyone's faces. I made it. Leave the rest to me, old Peter. The voice belonged to someone who filled the clearing like a mountain. Old Peter let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Sebastian stood 3 meters tall in a dragon-human form, a monstrous silhouette against the dimming sky. Even Greyback's pupils narrowed in instinctive alarm. What are you? Greyback snarled, fury and disbelief twisting his features. He glanced at his companions and shrugged as if to dismiss the question. No matter what you are, you die here. He raised his wand without hesitation and spat the curse like a sentence. Avada Kedavra! A green jet lashed from his wand toward Sebastian. The curse hit a wall of light, the stacked curse, flaring on the giant's chest and stopping dead. It wasn't even close to breaking through, barely a dent. For someone who had layered hundreds of stacked curses, that killing curse was nothing. Sebastian watched the green flash die against his wards and allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. He stepped forward, grins spreading across his face. Is that it? The werewolves watched in stunned silence. The killing curse, Avada Kedavra, had no effect. Fear rippled through the pack. They were bullies by instinct, but this was something else altogether. Don't be fooled, Greyback roared. He must be carrying protective items. Everyone, attack! I refuse to believe the killing curse can't kill someone. Curses answered him, one after another, a volley of Avada Kedavras aimed at the giant. Sebastian's left hand trembled once, and an instant later, an ice barrier rose up to shield old Peter. Then the giant moved with impossible speed. He pushed off and vanished from where he stood, rematerializing beside a werewolf who hadn't even had time to react. Stacked curse is a bit wasteful on you little fries, Sebastian said, and swung the wolfsbane club in both hands. The werewolf exploded under the blow, blood spraying like a smashed melon. Sebastian's face registered amusement and a touch of regret. Too much force. I'll have to remember to hold back. Cleaning up is a nuisance. Around him, the pack panicked. They fired curses and then scattered, stumbling through the undergrowth. They wanted nothing more than to run, anywhere, but the anti-apparition charm Greyback had cast held them fast. They couldn't apparate away. The thought of facing this inhuman defender left them shaking with dread. You started it by using the killing curse, Sebastian said, sweeping his gaze over them. So I'm only acting in self-defense. Fear turned to chaos. The werewolves fled deeper into the trees, desperate to put distance between themselves and this monster, who shrugged off killing curses and tore one of them apart with a single swing. Some would run and never return. Others would rethink their leader. Greyback, face pale and lips curled in fury, watched his followers scatter. His threat to bite the children and celebrate Peter's death hung in the air like a curse. But for the moment, the hunters had become the hunted. Chapter 200, helping Voldemort clean up his team. Watching the werewolves scatter in every direction, Sebastian felt underwhelmed. They were too fragile. There was none of the thrill he got from fighting alchemical constructs. Still, he couldn't let the pack escape into the hills. Every radical werewolf here was a wanted villain. They weren't quite as notorious as Fenrir Greyback, but they were bad seeds all the same. Brutal predators who delighted in attacking humans under the full moon. Let them go now, and who knew how many more innocents would be torn and turned by their fangs. He tightened his grip on his wand and aimed at the towering trees. With transfiguration, trunks and branches rippled and lengthened, becoming giant pythons that slid off the trunks and coiled after the fleeing wolves. No matter how desperately they ran, the snakes pursued. Before one could even react, a python struck, wrapped him tight, and the sick crack of breaking bones echoed as he twitched twice and stopped. Snakes surged from every direction. One werewolf leapt to flee but was smacked back down by a thick tail. Another was bound fast and bitten through the neck. Screams thinned and then vanished into the night. Greyback's earlier aura of command had evaporated. He panicked, dodging snakes with the same frantic animal movements he used when hunting, but there was no composure left. Damn that creature. How could it be this strong? His men were among the best. They could run from aurors and still fight back. Now they were being swallowed like lambs. A fuzz of memory passed through him. Once he had chased a child the same way, had toyed and then bitten, then tossed the child aside. Did that child become a werewolf? He couldn't remember. It hadn't mattered to him then. A powerful shove from behind slammed Greyback to the ground. He rolled up, snatched his wand, and snarled, "Avada!" He never finished the curse. In one smooth movement, his wand was ripped from his fingers. "My wand!" His eyes went white with rage. Without his wand, he had no escape. He lunged, teeth bared, biting savagely into Sebastian's arm. If he drew blood, perhaps he could pass on lycanthropy. If he couldn't live, neither would his enemy. He felt his teeth strike something harder than flesh, hard as steel, and two fangs shattered. Pain flared but did not stop him. He tore and bit again. Sebastian watched, amused. "Fenrir," he said coldly, "I gave you a chance. You're useless. You can't even break my defenses." He took Greyback by the throat with his free hand, lifted him, and strolled back to where old Peter lay near the ice house. With a casual motion, he threw Greyback to the ground. Ropes, enchanted and taut, snapped out of nowhere and bound him fast. "I wrapped up your men for you," Sebastian said. "As for you, Fenrir Greyback, many of my employees despise you. I'll let them sleep easier because of this." "No, please." The madness in Greyback's eyes dulled, replaced by the desperate animal urge to live. "Don't kill me. I can join you. I'll serve you." "Serve?" Sebastian raised an eyebrow. "Yes, I'll be your humble servant." Greyback clutched at the offer like a drowning man at a rope. "I'm your man. For someone like you, there are things I can do. I can handle anything you ask. Give me a chance." "No need." Sebastian shook his head lightly. "I don't take servants. I take good employees." He glanced at old Peter as he said it. "I already have plenty of werewolf employees who do their jobs well." Then he hefted his bludgeon. Greyback's face went white. "By the way," Sebastian added quietly, "give my greetings to Lupin, Jenny, and Hall. You're the reason they were turned." The bludgeon came down. Greyback's howl ripped through the trees, a terrible, high keening that turned raw and thin as the pain swallowed him. He had savored that cry from others for so long. Never had he imagined he would scream with such helpless misery when the pain was his. The howl faded and then ceased. Sebastian remained unmoved as he looked at the mangled form. He flicked his wand, and the soil writhed as if an invisible hand dragged the dead deep into the earth. The forest smoothed back to its original quiet. Only old Peter knew what had happened in that clearing tonight. With Greyback and the radical werewolves dealt with, Sebastian felt satisfied. He knew it wouldn't be long before Lord Voldemort rose again and tried to gather allies. These werewolves might have been useful to him, but they would be nothing more than expendable instruments. Voldemort never truly trusted such filth. Sebastian suppressed a cold laugh. "My Dark Lord," he thought, "I'll tidy up the dregs for you before you need to see them. Consider it my contribution." He sheathed his bludgeon, dispelled his dragon-human form, and, accompanied by old Peter, left the dark forest. The trees stood silent, the wind stirred the leaves, and seemed to whisper the night's deeds back into shadow.